Madam Clerk.
Supplemental.
We have a communication from the House.
Chair recognizes Senator Stanislaw, the senior senator from Fairfax County.
Madam President, I move that we waive the reading of the communications from the House.
The question is, shall the reading of the communication be waived? Those in favor of waiving the reading of the communication from the House of Delegates will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 37, noes 3.
Ayes 37, noes 3. The reading of the communication from the House of Delegates is waived.
Supplemental calendar number 1, unfinished business House. House Bill 1770. The House rejects the Senate substitute.
Chair recognizes Senator Stanislaw.
Madam President, I move that we insist on our Senate substitute and request a committee of conference.
The question is, shall the Senate insist on its substitute and request a committee of conference on the bill? All in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The Senate insists.
House Bill 2302. The House has rejected the Senate substitute with amendments.
Chair recognizes Senator Marsden, the senator from Western Fairfax County.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that we insist on our Senate substitute with amendments and request a committee of conference.
The question is, shall the Senate insist on its amendments and request a committee of conference on the bill? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, noes 0.
Ayes 39, no 0. The Senate insists.
House Bill 2330. The House has rejected the Senate substitute.
Chair recognizes Senator Edwards, the senator from Roanoke City.
Madam President, I move that we insist on our substitute and request a committee of conference.
The question is, shall the Senate insist on its substitute and request a committee of conference on the bill? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 38, noes 0.
Ayes 38, no 0. The Senate insists.
House Bill 2333. The House has rejected the Senate substitute.
Chair recognizes again Senator Stanislaw.
Madam President, I move that we insist on our substitute and request a committee of conference.
The question is, shall the Senate insist on its substitute and request a committee of conference on the bill? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, noes 0.
Ayes 39, no 0. The Senate insists.
House Bill 2348. The House rejects the Senate substitute.
Chair recognizes Senator Peterson, the senator from Fairfax City.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that we insist on our substitute. Is that it? And request committee conference.
The question is, shall the Senate insist on its substitute and request a committee of conference on the bill? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The Senate insists.
House Bill 1623. The House accedes to the request for a committee of conference. Conference on the part of the Senate is named by the Chair of Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources, Senator Peterson, R. Senators Peterson, Suderline, and Marsden. House Bill 1630. The House has acceded to a request for a committee of conference. Conferees on the part of the Senate is named by the chair, co-chairs of Finance and Appropriations, Senators Howell and Barker, or Senators Lucas, Deeds, and Vogel. House Bill 1775. The House has acceded to a request for a committee of conference. Conferees on the part of the Senate is named by the Chair of Commerce and Labor, Senator Saslaw, or Senators DeSteff, Marsden, and Deeds. House Bill 1887. The House has acceded to a request for a committee of conference. Conferees on the part of the Senate is named by the Chair of Education and Health, Senator Lucas, or Senators Hashmi, Suderline, and McClellan. House Bill 1949, I should remember that number, a bill to amend and reenact, I'm sorry. Let me start over. House Bill 1949. The House acceded to a request of committee of conference. And conferees on the part of the Senate is named by the Chair of Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources, Senator Peterson, or Senators Peterson, Lewis, and Stewart. House Bill 2220. The House has acceded to a request for a committee of conference. Conferees on the part of the Senate is named by the co-chairs of Finance and Appropriations, Senators Howell and Barker, or Senators Lewis, Ruff, and Mason. House Bill 2222. The House has acceded to a request for a committee of conference. Conferees on the part of the Senate is named by the Chair of Education and Health, Senator Lucas, or Senators Lucas, Peterson, and Pillion. House Bill 2275. The House has acceded to a request for a committee of conference. Conferees on the part of the Senate is named by the Chair of Commerce and Labor, Senator Saslaw, or Senator Spruill, Norman, and Servell. House Bill 2317.
2370. Oh no, you were right. Sorry.
House Bill 2317. The House has acceded to a request for a committee of conference. Conferees on the part of the Senate is named by the co-chairs of Judiciary, Senators Edwards and Deeds, or Senators Spruill, Deeds, and Stanley. House Bill 2370. The House has acceded to a request for a committee of conference. Conferees on the part of the Senate is named by the co-chairs of Judiciary, Senators Edwards and Deeds, or Senators Spruill, Peterson, and Stewart. Servell, sorry. Let me read that again.
Did I write it wrong?
Stewart.
Servell, Peterson, Stewart.
Is that right?
Uh-huh.
Okay, on House Bill 2370, again, conferees on the part of the Senate, Senators Servell, Peterson, and Stewart. House Bill 2411, the House has acceded to a request for a committee of conference. Conferees on the part of the Senate is named by the co-chairs of Judiciary are Senators Edwards and Deeds. Conferees are Senators Deeds, Boysko, and Obenshain.
Going to page 12.
Going to page 12. Unfinished business, Senate. Senate Bill 845 is passed the House with amendment.
Chair recognizes Senator Peterson, the senator from Fairfax City.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that we reject the House amendment and request a committee of conference. Or move that we reject the House amendment. Let's just do with that. Actually, let me rephrase that. I move that we accept, with the recommendation we reject, I move that we accept the House amendment.
And your explanation, sir?
Yes, this is the immunity of persons at a public hearing. The delegate for Marion and I have competing bills in this code section I just explained a moment ago, and we need to get it into conference so we can get them to comply, which means we each have to reject and get to conference.
The question is, with the recommendation that it be rejected, shall the Senate concur with the House amendment? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote with the recommendation that it be rejected? The clerk will close the roll.
0, noes 40.
Aye, 0, noes 40. The Senate does not concur.
Senate Bill 873 has passed the House with amendment.
Chair recognizes Senator McDougal, the senator from Hanover.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I move that the Senate accept the amendment from the House of Delegates and speaking to the motion.
A senator may continue.
Madam President, this amendment limited the individuals that had standing in order to file these proceedings and just further clarified the limited nature of this bill.
The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House amendment? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The Senate concurs.
Senate Bill 955 has passed the House with a substitute.
Chair recognizes Senator Ruff, the senator from Mecklenburg.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the substitute be agreed to. Speaking to that motion,
The senator has the floor.
the House substitute simply limits the number of out-of-state National Guardsmen who can receive reduced out-of-state tuition fees. And I'm do my motion pass.
The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House substitute? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The Senate concurs.
Senate Bill 1089
Chair recognizes Senator
passed the
Eben.
House with amendments.
Chair recognizes Senator Eben, the senator from Alexandria.
Thank you, Madam President. I move the amendments be agreed to, and speaking to that.
The senator has the floor.
This had to do with writs of eviction and gathering some data and having it reviewed by a work group. The House proposes having that data reviewed by an existing work group rather than a new one, which is fine, and that would just be done for 1 year rather than ongoing, which is clarifying in nature. Again, I renew my motion that we accept the amendment.
The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House amendments? Those in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The Senate concurs.
Senate Bill 1108. The House has passed the House with a substitute with amendment.
Chair again recognizes Senator Ruff.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the substitute be agreed to. Speaking to that motion,
The Senate has the floor.
the House substitute narrows the bill, requiring labeling that the FDA has not evaluated kratom nor its value in diagnosing, treating, curing, or preventing disease. I renew the motion that it be agreed to.
The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House amendments? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The Senate concurs.
Senate Bill 1114 has passed the House with amendment.
Chair recognizes Senator Stanley, the senator from Franklin County.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that we concur with the House amendment, and speaking to that motion.
The senator has the floor.
Senate Bill 114, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, is the creation of a portal in which developers can find green open spaces for development, residential development all throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia. It had the clause on it, and I do not want to trespass upon the chairman of Finance's determinations, the senator from Northern Fairfax, but their amendment to this Senate Bill 1114 was to rip the clause off. So I like it that way, but just make sure I let everybody know that's the only change they made. And so I renew my motion that we concur with the House amendment.
The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House amendment? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 26, noes 14.
Ayes 26, noes 14. The Senate concurs.
Senate Bill 1184
Chair recognizes
has
Senator.
passed the House with a substitute.
Chair recognizes Senator Reeves, the senator from Spotsylvania.
Thank you, Madam President. With the recommendation that it be rejected, I move the substitute be agreed to. Speaking of that,
The senator may continue.
Madam President, this was a very simple bill, changing one word. It's come back from the House like it's a dictionary, and I'm hopefully get it at conference.
With the recommendation that it be rejected, the question is, shall the Senate concur with the House substitute? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? With the recommendation that it be rejected. Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 0, noes 40.
Ayes 0, noes 40. The House substitute is rejected.
Senate Bill 1195 has passed the House with a substitute.
Chair again recognizes Senator Reeves.
Thank you, Madam President. With the recommendation the substitute be agreed to, I'd like to speak to that.
The senator has the floor.
Members of the chamber, the House, in their infinite wisdom, changed the words that said appropriated to either allocated or transferred, so it's technical in nature. I think they just wanted to clean the code up. I'd ask that it be approved.
The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House substitute? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, noes 1.
Ayes 39, noes 1. The Senate concurs.
Madam President,
For what purpose does the gentleman from Roanoke County rise?
I'm glad to be confused with the senator from Rockingham. He's a great senator. But I would appreciate if we could reconsider the vote by which we just agreed to the House amendment on Senate Bill 1195. I think some people may want to abstain.
The question is, shall the vote by which the House substitute was agreed to on Senate Bill 1195 be reconsidered? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The vote is reconsidered. Senator Reeves.
Having previously explained, thank you, Madam President, having previously explained the amendment, I ask it pass.
The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House substitute? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 36, noes 2.
Ayes 36.
2.
Ayes 36, noes 2. Rule 36-2. The Senate concurs.
Madam President.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Franklin County rise?
As the sun starts to set in the west, I start making mistakes. Having voted on the prevailing side by which Senate Bill 1114's we concurred with the House amendment, I ask now that we reconsider that vote. Page 14.
The question is, shall the vote by which Senate Bill 1114, the amendments thereto were agreed to, be reconsidered? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, no 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The vote is reconsidered. Senator Stanley.
Thank you, Madam President. I now move that we accept and concur with the House amendments on Senate Bill 1114.
The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House amendments? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, no 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The Senate concurs.
Senate Bill 1233. It's passed the House with a substitute.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Rockingham County, Senator Obenshain.
Madam President, with the recommendation that it be rejected, I move that the substitute from the House be agreed to. Speaking to that,
The senator may continue.
the House stripped out half the bill. We just need to arm wrestle and figure out whether it can go back in.
The question is, with the recommendation that it be rejected, shall the Senate concur with the House substitute? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote with the recommendation that it be rejected? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 0, noes 40.
Ayes 0, noes 40. The Senate does not concur.
Senate Bill 1244, reported from, it has passed the House with a substitute.
Chair recognizes Senator Sorrowville, the senator from Eastern Fairfax County.
Thank you, Madam President. I would move that we concur with the House substitute and speak to that motion.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. This is the bill that has to do with when the Attorney General steps in and acts as a prosecutor in a case, and their duty to meet with the victim before dropping a case. And specifically on appeal was the situation I was worried about. The Attorney General's office came back with some language which sort of narrowed it down a bit, still dealt with my problem, but didn't have what they felt might be a broader impact on and some unintended consequences. And I was fine with that, and I would hope we could adopt the substitute.
The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House substitute? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, no 0.
Ayes 39, no 0. The Senate concurs.
Senate Bill 1245 has passed the House with a substitute.
Chair recognizes Senator Obenshain.
Madam President, with the recommendation that it be rejected, I move the House substitute be agreed to. When speaking to that,
Senator has the floor.
This is a Senate companion to a House bill that we talked about yesterday, dealing with how we deal with technical violations of parole terms versus post-release supervision terms. The House version, the Senate version do exactly the same thing, but in very different ways. We need to send this to conference in order to figure out which way we're going to accomplish the end that both sides agree to.
With the recommendation that it be rejected, the question is, shall the Senate concur? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote with the recommendation that it be rejected? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 0, nays 40.
Ayes 0, noes 40. Senate does not concur.
Senate Bill 1264 is passed the House with amendments.
Chair recognizes Senator McDougal, the senator from Hanover.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I move the amendments be agreed to. And speaking to the motion,
The senator has the floor.
Madam President, the House did not like our word order choice, so they decided to change it. And we're okay.
The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House amendments? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The Senate concurs.
Senate Bill 1264 is passed the House with amendments.
1280. 1280.
Senate Bill 1280 is passed the House with a substitute.
Chair recognizes Senator Donovan, the senator from Enrico.
Thank you, Madam President. I move we concur with the House substitute and speak to that.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Members of the Senate, this is the internship bill that requires students who graduate from a four-year college in Virginia public institution to have a work experience. The changes in the substitute that was made in the House was friendly. It basically worked to define that it could be an internship, a degree-based work experience, or a non-degree-based work experience, just so that they had some sort of work, especially when the evidence shows 26% of kids are graduating today never having had a job. So it basically just worked to define the enactment clause so that we could get the product we wanted out of Chev. And it also extended the date so that the colleges had time to make sure every graduating student got this work experience. With that, I hope we will concur with the House substitute.
The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House substitute? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll. Ayes 40, no 0. The Senate concurs.
Senate Bill 1292 is passed the House with a substitute.
Chair recognizes Senator Deeds, the senator from Charlottesville.
Madam President, I move that the Senate agree to the House substitute. I'd like to speak to that.
The senator has the floor.
Madam President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, you may remember that this bill had to do with establishing a pilot project for a safe harbor for sex-trafficked kids. We worked throughout the process on this, when the bill was on this side, to reduce the fiscal impact and get the bill passed. And in the House, what they've done is continued on that path. They've taken some of the burden off of the Department of Criminal Justice Services and put it on the locality and the local agency, which is going to harbor this safe harbor pilot project. I hope you'll agree to that.
The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House substitute? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, no 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The Senate concurs.
Senate Bill 1302 is passed the House with an amendment.
Again, Senator Deeds.
Madam President, I very reluctantly move to concur with the House amendment, and I would like to speak to that, please.
The senator has the floor.
I would like to be at a point in the session where we can say that this is simply a declaratory amendment. It simply helps the bill along. But what these grammaticians down the hall have done is they've taken a comma out of the bill. Now, that is the sum and substance of this amendment. It's a fight that's not worth having this late in the game. So I ask you to concur with the amendment.
question is, at long last, shall the Senate concur with the House amendment? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 34, no 6.
Ayes 34, no 6. The Senate concurs.
Senate Bill 1314 has passed the House with amendments.
Chair recognizes Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Madam President. This is a bill that came out of the Senate at 39-0.
Your motion, Senator.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Concur with the House's amendments.
The senator may continue.
Thank you. So there were small wordsmith changes that were made on this bill, basically on line 31 to strike unpaid when we were talking about expenses a mother may have incurred during a pregnancy, because the thought was maybe she paid for a crib and that wouldn't be able to be considered. So it was really just a clarifying issue. And further down on line 40, it struck legal parent. These amendments were agreed to by the interested parties, including the Family Law Coalition. And so with that, I hope you will approve the House amendments and move this bill right on out.
The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House amendments? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, no 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The Senate concurs.
Senate Bill 1357 has passed the House with a substitute.
Chair recognizes Senator Norman, the senator from James City County.
Thank you, Madam President. Speaking to the substitute, please.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm respectfully going to ask that the senator concur with the House substitute in speaking to that motion, ma'am.
The senator may continue.
Some of you may reluctantly recall under the cover of darkness in the past that some unilateral decisions were made unbeknownst to the Senate and with no one present but the TV cameras, that various statutes and artifacts that may have been in controversy were unceremoniously removed from the Capitol. And without getting into the controversy of the individual items, there were some, including myself, who thought that perhaps there was a better approach to this. And last session, I put in a bill that, for a variety of reasons, not objectionable reasons, but because of the process, it remained in conference. Senate Bill 1357 is before you again, and it deals with the Capitol Square Preservation Council with certain powers and duties. And what it provides under the substitute now is that that commission will review and approve plans and proposals and alterations with certain exceptions, and those exceptions that are noted in there are the Senate chamber, the House chamber, the new hall of the House of Delegates, and the individual chambers of the individual offices of both the House and the Senate. And it was just a thought that perhaps with many of the artifacts that we have in the Capitol, and with the fact that we have a Capitol Square Preservation Council, that would be appropriate for them to be involved in the process. So I would respectfully ask that the House substitute be agreed to.
Chair recognizes Senator Somerville, the senator from Eastern Fairfax County.
Will the gentleman yield for a question?
Will the gentleman yield for a question?
With enormous reluctance.
The senator yields. Senator Somerville has the floor.
Madam President, I commend the senator on getting this figured out after 2 years, and I agree with his approach in terms of the future. And I'm just curious with regard to what happened in the past and the items that were removed. If this, I don't know where all that went or where it is, but Does this address who has control over those items or where they are, or is that a different issue?
Senator Norman has the floor.
I thank the senator for his predictable, insightful question. Madam President, I would comment that this is, what is the term we used on some bills yesterday? This is prospective, and it is not looking in the rearview mirror. And Madam President, I know it would shock you that there are occasions where I enjoy a good legislative Donnybrook. This is not one, and therefore I don't want to get involved in going back in history and trying to undo what has happened. And Madam President, also to answer the gentleman, I have absolutely no idea where the artifacts are.
Thank the gentleman for his answer.
The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House substitute? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll. Ayes 39, no 0. The Senate concurs.
Madam President.
Chair recognizes the senior senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Madam President. Having voted on the prevailing side by which we passed Senate Bill 1357, I move that we reconsider that vote so that my seatmate can vote.
Senator, is the button not working again? The question is, shall the vote by which Senate Bill 1357 concurred with be reconsidered? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, no 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The vote is reconsidered. Senator Norman.
Madam President, having previously explained the bill, I would respectfully request that the House substitute be agreed to again.
The question is, shall the House substitute be agreed to? Those in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, no 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The Senate concurs.
Senate Bill 1361 is passed the House with a substitute.
Chair recognizes Senator Morrissey, the junior senator from Richmond.
Thank you, Madam President, and good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Madam President, with the recommendation that it be rejected, I move the House substitute be agreed to and provide an explanation.
The senator has the floor.
3 specific reasons. Number one, the House bill said that an explanation only had to be provided when granting parole. My bill says that an explanation has to be provided when either granting or denying. The second difference is that Senate Bill 1361 allowed for the Virginia Parole Board to be FOIA'd. The House bill did not. And lastly, the Senate bill allowed for the investigatory materials to be provided to both the DOC inmate and his attorney, and the House bill did not. For those reasons, I again, with a recommendation that it be rejected, move that the House substitute be granted.
The question is, with a recommendation that it be rejected, shall the Senate concur with the House substitute? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote with a recommendation that it be rejected? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 2, noes 38.
Ayes 2, noes 38. The Senate does not concur.
Senate Bill 1367 is passed the House with amendments.
Chair recognizes Senator Vogel, the senator from Fauquier.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that we concur with the House amendment and speaking to that motion.
The senator may continue.
Thank you, Madam President. This bill deals with the definition of abuse and neglect in the code, and what the House did was to remove language that would refer to children in a vehicle. And I think that was actually entirely appropriate. But the bill otherwise just clarifies that there are certain independent activities that are appropriate for children of a certain age. And so with that, I would move that we concur with the amendment. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Senator Surville, the senator from Eastern Fairfax County.
Will the senator from Fauquier yield for a question?
Will the senator yield?
I'm happy to yield.
The senator yields. Senator Surville has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. So I'm looking at the amendments shown on the calendar. I haven't exactly compared them yet, but it appears to me that they have inserted gross negligence in right next to willful and wanton, and in a couple places. And in the civil world, there are there's different levels of culpability. There's negligence, then there's gross negligence, then there's willful and wanton conduct. And those are three distinct concepts that have different levels of fault associated with them. And it looks to me like they might be mixing up gross negligence and willful and wanton together, which isn't really a thing. And I'm trying to understand why, what I don't know how a court would apply this when I read it. So that's, I'm making sure I'm reading it right.
So, Madam President,
Senator Bogle has the floor.
I thank the gentleman for drawing attention to this, because what happened in the other body just a little bit ago, I was not aware. What I've seen is what was drawn through and a picture which was sent to me. That was not included in that picture, which is why I should not look at the picture. I should look at my laptop. But I will tell you, all that I agreed to was simply removing the reference to the vehicle, the kid in a vehicle. The language that was there was the language that the gentleman and I had worked through.
Right.
So maybe we should just take this by temporarily, Madam President, and I'll go back and check.
Without objection, Senate Bill 1367 goes by temporarily.
Senate Bill 1495 is passed the House with a substitute.
Chair recognizes again Senator Surville.
Madam President, let's go by temporarily so I can try and figure out, remember what they did to my bill again so I can explain it accurately.
Without objection, Senate Bill 1495 also goes by temporarily.
Senate Bill 1515 has passed the House with amendments.
Chair recognizes Senator Stanley, the senator from Franklin County.
Thank you, Madam President. I now move the amendments, and speaking to that motion.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Members of the Senate, Senate Bill 1515 was a bill that creates civil liability for any kind of internet site, a website that is mostly and substantially made up of pornography, to keep minors, that is, children under the age of 18, from accessing those sites. What it will have the operative effect of doing is creating a filter by which one will have to prove and verify their age in order to access that content. What they did over in the House was basically define what constituted the wording of substantial portion. In the bill, it said it was a website that where a substantial portion of what the content was in that website was pornographic. We now then define substantial portion of saying at least more than 33 1/3% of total material on that website meets the definition of material that is harmful to minors. And then we tightened up the language to make sure that the platforms themselves, the Googles and the like, because they carry them, that does not create any legal obligation on their part to do the verification process. That should be the responsibility of these websites. So with that explanation, Madam President, I now renew my motion that we concur with the House amendments for Senate Bill 1515.
Chair recognizes Senator Edwards, the senator from Roanoke County.
Madam President and members of the Senate, would like to remind you of the Commerce Clause in the United States Constitution. This is a constitutional issue.
For what?
And so
the purpose?
I'd vote no.
The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House substitute amendments? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 38, noes 2.
Ayes 38, noes 2. The Senate concurs with the House amendments.
House Bill 1531 has passed the House with a substitute.
Chair recognizes again Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Madam President. I move we concur with the House substitute and speak to it.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. This is the Virginia Perinatal Neonatal Collaborative Bill, where we're looking at helping them become more of a positive influence on best outcomes for pregnant patients and postpartum patients. It was put into a Section 1 bill, which is a little bit more effective in helping the Virginia Department of Health and HHR actually kind of negotiate the contract for them. It was a little bit awkward where it was in code. So this bill accomplishes everything we want. And I move that we accept their substitute. Thank you, Madam President.
The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House substitute? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The Senate concurs.
Senate Joint Resolution 336. The House is agreed to by the House with an amendment.
Chair recognizes Senator Locke, the senator from Hampton.
Thank you, Madam President. Senate Joint Resolution 336 is establishing a commission for the continuing preservation and development of the Virginia Women's Monument. And the House, in its wisdom, felt that we should change the shall to may for adding to the wall of honor every 5 years. The names provided by the clerk's office for or changing shall to may for adding the names to the wall of honor. So I move that we agree to that amendment.
The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House amendment? Those in favor of that motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The Senate concurs with the House amendment.
Senate Bill 825. The House insists on this amendment and requests a committee of conference.
Chair recognizes Senator Bell, the senator from Loudoun.
Thank you, Madam President. I move to accede to the request for a committee of conference.
The question is, shall the Senate accede to a committee of conference on the bill? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, no 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The Senate accedes.
Conferees on the part of the Senate is named by the Chair of Education and Health, Senator Lucas, or Senators Bell, Hashmi, and Pillion. Senate Bill 1502. The House insists on its amendment and requests a committee of conference.
Chair recognizes Senator McPike, the senator from Prince William.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that we accede to the request for a committee of conference.
The question is, shall the Senate accede to the request for a committee of conference on the bill? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? All the senators voted. Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, no 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The Senate accedes to the request for a committee of conference on the bill.
Conferees on the part of the Senate is named by the Chair of Education and Health, Senator Lucas, or Senators McPike, Hashmi, and Hanger. Senate Bill 1255. The House insists on its amendments and requests a committee of conference.
Chair again recognizes Senator Donovan, the senator from Enrico.
Thank you, Madam President. I move we accede to the request for a committee of conference.
The
Accede
question.
to that. Don't have to. Wonderful.
The question is, shall the Senate accede to the request for a committee of conference on the bill? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, no 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The Senate accedes to the request for a committee of conference on the bill.
Conferees on the part of the Senate is named by the Chair of Education and Health. Senator Lucas are Senators Donovan, McPike, and Boysko. Senate Bill 1265. The House insists on its substitute and requests a committee conference.
Chair recognizes Senator Sasloff, the senior senator from Fairfax County.
Madam President, I move that we accede to the request for committee of conference on Senate Bill 1265.
The question is, shall the Senate accede to the request for a committee of conference? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, no 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The Senate accedes to the request for the committee of conference on the bill.
Conferees on the part of the Senate is named by the Chair of Commerce and Labor, Senator Saslaw, or Senators Saslaw, Spruill, and Norman. Senate Bill 1300. The House insists on its substitute with amendment and requests a committee of conference.
Chair again recognizes Senator Dees, the senator from Charlottesville.
Madam President, I move that we accede to the request for a committee of conference.
The question is, shall the Senate accede to the committee of conference request? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, no 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The Senate accedes to the request.
Conferees on the part of the Senate is named by the Chair of Education and Health, Senator Lucas, are Senators Deeds, Hashmi, and Hanger. Senate Bill 1370. The House insists on its substitute and requests a committee of conference.
Chair recognizes Senator Vogel, the senator from Fauquier.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that we accede to the House request for a committee of conference.
The question is, shall the Senate accede to the request for a committee of conference? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, no 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The Senate accedes to the committee of conference.
Conferees on the part of the Senate is named by the Chair of Commerce and Labor, Senator Saslaw, or Senators Surville, Mason, and Vogel. Senate Bill 1453. The House insists on its amendment and requests a committee of conference.
Chair again recognizes Senator McPike, the senator from Prince William.
Thank you, Madam President. Move we accede to the request for a committee of conference.
The question is, shall the Senate accede to the request? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, no 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The Senate accedes to the request for a committee of conference.
Conferees on the part of the Senate is named by the Chair of Education and Health, Senator Lucas, are Senators McPike, Peterson, and Suderline. Senate Bill 1464. The House insists on its substitute and requests a committee of conference.
Chair recognizes again Senator Vogel.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that we accede to the House's request for a committee of conference.
The question is, shall the Senate accede to the request for a committee of conference? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, no 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The Senate accedes.
Conferees on the part of the Senate is named by the Chair of Commerce and Labor, Senator Saslaw, or Senators Saslaw, Lewis, and Vogel. We are awaiting House action on the remaining bills. Turning to page 27. Oh, we need to go back. I'm sorry, we went by two temporarily. On page 18, Senate Bill 1367.
Chair again recognizes Senator Vogel.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to once again move that the House's amendment be agreed to. And speaking to that motion,
the senator has the floor.
Madam President, Senate Bill 1367 is the one that we were discussing a moment ago, and I needed to go back and confirm that the language was indeed what I thought it was, and that everybody was happy and there was peace in the valley. And I can confirm that there is peace in the valley. The definition change was the most significant change, and I think we are in a good place. And with that, I move that we adopt the amendment. Thank you.
The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House amendments? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, no 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The Senate concurs with the House amendments.
On page 19,
Chair again recognizes Senator Saravel.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that we concur with the House substitute and speaking to that motion.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. This is the bill that has to do with allowing individuals to hold local governments accountable for willful violations of a local enforcement, state law in an enforcement action. And the other body actually improved upon the measure we passed, I hate to say. But they basically made 4 changes. One is that instead of the lawsuit being capable of being brought by any aggrieved person, it limits it only to the person the enforcement action was against. So, your neighbor can't complain that they didn't, that they enforced incorrectly against something on your property. It has to be the property owner who got the enforcement action against them. That's the first thing they did. The second thing is that I think it was the municipal league asked for a change to make it clear that it had to be a violation of a local ordinance or regulation developed pursuant to the title instead of anything and everything a local government does. So now it has to be the local government using their own ordinance to enforce something instead of anything they do. That's the second thing. Third thing is that they wanted to make it clear that it only relates to enforcement actions that are taken after July 1, so you can't bring legal action after July 1 for something that happened before July 1, which is necessary. And the last thing is they added a sentence to this bill to make it clear that we're not trying to abrogate qualified immunity in any way, which was never the intent. So this just makes that clear. So with those 4 changes, nobody testified against the bill in committee. I think VACO might have, but the municipal league was satisfied. I think this is as close to peace in the valley we're going to get, and it came out of here, I think, nearly unanimous, and I would hope we could pass this substitute.
The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House substitute? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, noes 1.
Ayes 39, noes 1. The Senate concurs.
On page 27, regular calendar, House Bill on third reading, House Bill 2129, a bill.
You don't have to read it again. It went by temporarily earlier.
Chair recognizes Senator Norman, the senator from James City County.
Thank you, Madam President. Speaking to the bill,
The senator has the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, I apologize because I asked this to be passed by temporarily, and now I'm prepared to revisit it. Actually, when the bill came through the Courts Committee that...
And your motion, sir?
I'm sorry?
Your motion?
I have a motion in, what did my friend from Augusta say?
The form of a preamble.
The preface to my motion.
Senator may continue.
My motion is going to move that House Bill 2129 be re-referred back to the Committee of Courts and Justice. And speaking to the motion.
The senator has the floor.
Madam President, when the bill came before the Senate Courts Committee, I had some complicity and offered an amendment that agreed that the age of 16 would be the appropriate age for this bill to go into effect. And just a very, very brief reminder, what this bill does is it provides for remote or closed circuit to take place in certain criminal offenses that involve vulnerable young victims. And I have had some professional experience in this, and matter of fact, actually tried the case about a week before we came into session. On reflection, I own the good things I do and the bad things I do, and on reflection, I decided that I should not have amended it from age 14 to 16. And I think the best place to deal with this would be in the Courts Committee and to re-refer it. The closed circuit system works very well for some young victims. Right now, if I'm correct, there are certain statutory provisions that we set the age of 14 as being appropriate in the Commonwealth of Virginia. I'm very respectful that there are those that would disagree with my position on this, but I would prefer to see the age remain at 14 as opposed to 16 or 18. So with that, I would respectfully ask the bill to be re-referred to the Committee on Courts.
Chair recognizes Senator Morrissey, the junior senator from Richmond.
Speaking to the measure.
The senator has the floor.
Speaking to the motion, very briefly, I hope that the body, especially people on this side, will also agree and re-refer this to the Committee on the Judiciary.
Chair recognizes the senator from Arlington, Senator Favola.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm speaking to the motion.
The senator has the floor.
I would not be in favor of recommitting this bill to judiciary, although I do understand some of the issues that have been raised. I think this bill is a standalone bill, although the age has been raised to 16 for this closed-circuit TV option that a judge may require or request. And this would happen in cases where there's child sexual assault. So it pains me to think that this bill is going to be recommitted and we're not dealing with a subject that is as important as this subject when we know, based on all the science and all the testimony we've heard as senators, a child at 16 is a child. And the traumatizing effect of suffering a sexual assault is incredible, especially since 91% of the child abuse cases, child sexual assault cases, are the result of a perpetrator who is either a family member or a close friend. So why we're not dealing with this, I suppose it's because there's some process or some other statute, as was referred to. I'd like to see that statute fixed and this go forward. But I expect I won't be supported heavily in that motion. But I do feel I deserved the opportunity to make my statement. Thank you, Madam President.
Chair recognizes Senator McClellan, the senior senator from Richmond.
Thank you, Madam President. Speaking to the motion.
The senator has the floor.
I would ask that we vote against this motion to the extent amendments that were made in committee are regretted. We have a process for dealing with that through floor amendments. I just want to note that there is a difference in brain development, in maturity that we recognize in state law between those that are under 16 and those that are older. You can't be emancipated unless you're 16 or older. We amended, the senator from Fauquier and I a few years ago amended the child marriage laws to make clear that if you're under 16, you shouldn't be able to be married, but if you're 16 and older, because you can legally be emancipated, that should be an option. Our laws distinguish between sex with a child over 16 and sex with a child under 16. There are many, many, many instances where we recognize that 1 year difference between 15 and 16 matters because of the maturity level and differences in brain development at that age. And so I know I'm probably going to be on the losing side of this battle, but I just want us to think carefully about what we're talking about here. We know a lot more about the impact of trauma on children. We know that when a child has been sexually abused by someone they trust, that is among the greatest traumas they can ever suffer. I have watched as my former chief of staff had to struggle as an adult with trauma that she suffered at the hands of a trusted coach, when at the time she couldn't process it enough to come forward because she knew as part of that she would have to confront her abuser in court. And it wasn't until she was an adult that she reached a point where she was able to handle the re-traumatization of being in court and facing her abuser. All this bill does, in addition to changing the age, which we can do a floor amendment to change back, is allow the opportunity, more of an opportunity for an expert to say, in this particular instance, testifying by closed circuit television is better for this child to avoid additional trauma. And if we want to move that age back to 16, we can do that on the floor. And for that reason, ask that we not recommit it, but we handle the change in opinion or the regret here on the floor. Thank you, Madam President.
Chair recognizes Senator Boysko, the senator from northwestern Fairfax County.
Thank you, Madam President. Speaking against the amendment.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. This bill was thoughtfully crafted over the past year with Commonwealth's attorney in Fairfax County because only one individual has been able to use the statute as we changed it a few years ago. You will remember that our colleague who is no longer with us, Ben Chafin, changed the law to make it more permissive so that children, as my good friend from Richmond has just described, have some flexibility. There are 39 other states who have changed the law in a similar fashion, and not one of them has been overturned. A majority of these are even more permissive than our current law is right now, the one that we're talking about, this bill. This is not a new concept. I get pretty emotional about this. I'm not an attorney. I don't play one on TV, but I am somebody who had a pretty difficult childhood. And I can tell you that when you're a little kid and there's dysfunction in your family, Mom makes sure that you're staying quiet. It says, don't rock the boat. Dad could be scary. And the idea that a child of any age or an adult, as we just discussed, finally has the strength and the resilience to say something needs to change. There are families where it's not just one child that gets abused. Some families, it's the big sister and the little sister, and then they finally get to the third little sister, and the biggest sister says, I've got to do something about this. When we suggest that trauma is not that big of a deal, I take exception to that. Every 9 minutes, according to data that I have here, every 9 minutes, Child Protective Services substantiates or finds evidence for a claim of child sexual abuse. Of all victims under 18, 2 out of 3 are aged 12 to 17. 1 in 9 girls and 1 in 53 boys under the age of 18 experience sexual abuse or assault at the hand of an adult. 82% of those are females. And this is long-lasting trauma for people. They'll be about 4 times more likely to develop symptoms of drug abuse. So when we're talking about the drug epidemic, some of those people that we're worried about were sexually assaulted by family members, according to data. About 4 times more likely to experience PTSD as adults, and about 3 times more likely to experience a major depressive episode as an adult. 93% of perpetrators are known to the victim. And so when we talk about trauma, when we talk about providing protection for the defendant as the top priority, I know that there are probably some issues where a very irresponsible parent talks their child into lying, and we have a process to unravel that. But you know what? The kids who are dealing with this in their homes, and they finally have the resilience and the strength to say, nobody else, this is not going to happen to anybody else, we need to do something. They deserve adults to protect them and give the judge the option, not the requirement. Give the judge the option to allow them to testify remotely. There is no mandate in this bill. It is a simple, slightly more permissive position that would give the judges, the people that we choose here in this room, and we trust them as fair brokers to make a decision in the best case of the child in order to hold someone who has harmed them accountable. I cannot believe that we are not all supporting this. This House voted unanimously for this bill. This is something that has been worked through thoughtfully and carefully. And as someone who was not in this situation, but did have a difficult childhood where it wasn't always safe, and you sometimes had to go next door to sleep because it wasn't safe, I know, I have an idea of what those kids are dealing with, and I move that we do not support sending this back. This is too important.
Chair recognizes Senator McPike, the senator from Prince William.
Thank you, Madam President. Speaking against the motion.
The senator has the floor.
If any time that these young kids need your vote, it's now, and not to send this back. The sheer fact is, if you look at the cases, these kids, sometimes at ages 8, 9, 10 years old, that have suffered rape and lots of other unspeakable things, don't realize it until years later, until they start to mature and understand what happened to them, because they've locked it and bottled it away. And the trauma that is unleashed is absolutely crippling to these kids. This is an important option that these kids and the judges need to have in place. This is sometimes, in some cases, still life and death to these kids who go through severe mental trauma through the reliving and re-experiencing and re-seeing that assailant. These kids deserve your vote today and not to send it back to committee.
Chair recognizes Senator Sorovel.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Speaking to the motion.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So I want to try and focus the discussion a little bit on what the issue is here. And I've represented child sex victims in civil cases. Had to talk to them about what happened. It's extraordinarily painful for them. I have zero. I have complete. Let me put it this way: I have complete concern for them and what they face and what they have to go through in order to get through these cases. I appreciate that. There's a couple issues here in terms of both how this bill got here, and then there's another thing we have to deal with called the United States Constitution and the Constitution of Virginia. First of all, while we've been sitting here, I pulled the 35 other statutes from all the other states that have this kind of statute on the books. There are 4 other states that require a severe level of trauma. There's other states that require a serious level of trauma. There's other states that require a court to look at a whole series of factors. There are probably 5, 10 different types of approaches you can take to greenlighting this type of testimony. We didn't discuss any of that in the Judiciary Committee because all we had was 10 minutes. The bill came through. It was at the very end of our calendar. We had to get out of there. We had to get our work done. We didn't have time to talk about this bill. We didn't have enough time to talk about it. That's nobody's fault, but it came through in a short session on a very busy docket, one of the last bills we heard because it was a very complicated bill, and we didn't have enough time to talk about it. And this area of law is extraordinarily complex in terms of how other states approach it and in terms of also the constitutional issues. It has significant constitutional issues. And the Constitution, sometimes it can be an inconvenient thing. But the Constitution is there for a reason. And I hope, you all remember that the origins of the Sixth Amendment, the right to confrontation, where'd that come from, right? There was a few guys named George Washington, George Mason, some others. They met at a bar in Alexandria, came up with the Fairfax Resolves. That turned into the Virginia Declaration of Rights. That language was drawn out of 400 years of wisdom and experience of abuse, monarchical abuse. Sir Walter Raleigh got put in prison because he wasn't able to ask questions of the people who were accusing him of things. James Madison took those words in 1983, another Virginian, and put that in the United States Bill of Rights. And the idea is that you have the right to confront your accuser. And the reason for that is because when people have to look at each other and say things, it changes their testimony. That's the reality. That's the shared human experience that we all share. And what the United States Supreme Court said in Maryland v. Craig, which is a 1990 case, is that if we're going to take away the person's right to sit in the courtroom and hear the testimony that's being said against them, you have to show, under the Maryland statute, they said you had to show that the child victim would suffer severe emotional distress. Severe distress, way up here. And that doesn't apply in the civil cases. Civil cases, you can testify on video all day long because all we're talking about is money. But if you want to take away somebody's liberty, you have to show that victim will suffer severe distress. And what hasn't been said in any of the comments we've heard, this bill takes it from severe distress down to distress. And I would challenge anybody to show me anybody who thinks cross-examination is fun. It's fun for the lawyers. It is not fun for the person who's having to answer the questions. And if all you have to show is some distress, that's going to mean every single case is going to be done by video. Every single one. And that is not constitutional. I'm sorry. It just isn't. I don't think there's another state that has a threshold that low. If there are, it's not very many. And, just think about the reasons why we have these rules, right? I mean, It's one of the few things I agree with Justice Scalia about. Justice Scalia, one of the things he once said was dispensing with confrontation because the testimony is obviously reliable is akin to dispensing with jury trial because the defendant is obviously guilty. Right? That's one thing he said. He also has said, John Henry Wigmore said, cross-examination is the greatest legal engine that's ever been invented for the discovery of the truth because really interesting things happen on cross-examination. It's amazing what happens. I just want you to think about some movies really quick, by the way. Think about Atticus Finch and his cross-examination of Mayella, right? Think about You Can't Handle the Truth and A Few Good Men, right? Think about, for example, Elle Wood's cross-examination in Legally Blonde. And I don't mean to diminish what we're talking about here, but I'm just telling you, these are moments that you remember from movies because when you have to ask people questions, right, the truth often starts to come out. It's never on direct examination. It's always on cross. And, this statute, I think, is just completely, it's well-intentioned, but it needs a whole lot more work that we didn't have in committee. And the last thing I'll say, two last things I'll say, is please remember that 93% of felony convictions happen by plea, right? 93% of people who are convicted by plea. Only 7% go to trial. So we're not talking about the entire sort of group of cases. We're only talking about the 7% that don't go to trial, number one. Number two, the last 3 exonerations that we have paid money for in this body had child accusers. And our finance committee has been writing checks for situations where the child testified and maybe they didn't like how they were being punished or disciplined. They were having some issue with their parent. It turned into something and then it ended up in a conviction. It happens more often than you would like to think. And before we wade into this area, we need to do it thoughtfully, carefully, deliberately. We need to have a full committee hearing. We need to be able to talk about this with our lawyers. The way this got here is not right. It needs to have more time in committee before we're out here voting this on the floor. And that's not to diminish anything that's happened to the victims that we're talking about here. But that's the way we need to pass this, or else we're going to be back revisiting this in a couple years because the court is going to say we went way too far, way too fast. That's why it needs to go back to committee, Madam President.
Chair again recognizes Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Madam President. I apologize for speaking twice, but I want to point out a couple of things in current law that's not being changed.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. If you look at lines 34 to 39, there will be cross-examination because it says that the attorney for the Commonwealth and the defense attorney shall be present in the room with the child, and the child shall be subject to direct and cross-examination. What we are talking about is when there is evidence, a preponderance of the evidence, that a child will suffer emotional trauma that is more than de minimis as a result of testifying in the defendant's presence in the courtroom, then the court can require closed-circuit testimony with cross-examination and the lawyer in the room. So you can have your Perry Mason moment. You can have your Atticus Finch moment. The founders never contemplated closed-circuit TV. But this is an extra protection for a child. And again, we have made distinctions that recognize the difference between a 14-year-old, a 15-year-old, and a 16-year-old. And this is trying to recognize that when testifying in the presence of your abuser will re-traumatize you. And we heard evidence, we talked about all the constitutional issues in committee. I asked legislative services because when there is a bill that raises constitutional questions, they do a memo to the patron. That didn't happen in this case. We also heard there's evidence that when a child victim faces their perpetrator in court, that oftentimes that skews their testimony. I have seen us handle 500-page bills on the last day of session with a brand new substitute that pass in 5 minutes. Maybe we take a recess and look at it. So if a 10-minute hearing wasn't long enough, we've had 3 days. We have the time to get this right on the floor if we need to, if all we're talking about is changing the age back. I ask that we vote against the motion.
Chair recognizes Senator Howell, the senator from Northern Fairfax County.
Thank you, Madam President. This is something I had hoped never to need to speak about, particularly in public and particularly on the floor of the Senate. But I would urge you not to send this bill back. When I was very young, I was forcibly sodomized. The police were not as advanced as they are now, and there was no video testimony available. But what happened to me was the police, having picked up somebody, put me alone in a room with that man. I was traumatized then, and it is still something that is traumatic. It comes back. It comes back. And it's been more than 70 years. We're talking about children. We can't re-traumatize them. It is absolutely inhumane. And if you want to go further, I'd be happy to talk to any of you about it and some of the ramifications of what can happen to a child who's been sodomized. Thank you, Madam President.
Chair recognizes Senator Favola, the senator from Arlington.
Thank you, Madam President. My apologies for speaking twice, but I have some information I think might add to the deliberations here, speaking again in opposition to the motion.
The senator may continue.
Thank you. Psychologists who are experts in this field tell us if the judicial system is intent on actually learning what happened and finding the facts, it is far more realistic to have a child testify on a closed-circuit television where they're not seeing their abuser, where they're not in a courtroom, which would require a lot of composure, even for adults in a courtroom. Adults have a difficult time dealing with cross-examination, but a child can't remember the detail because the child just went through something that is really unspeakable. Why are we debating this bill? Do we not trust our court system? This bill merely provides the judge with an option of having a closed-circuit television video with the child if the child has suffered some trauma. And I think they refer back to a case, a court case that you all referenced, or maybe the senator from Eastern Fairfax referenced, the Maryland versus Craig court case. I'm being told by attorneys who have looked at this bill and have read the Maryland versus Craig court case that this bill really falls into line with that decision, and that was a Supreme Court decision. So clearly the evidence about child development, about trauma, about finding truth has evolved. And using a closed-circuit TV for a child who's 16 years of age or under is a better practice than not. And we're not mandating that. We're still giving the option to the judge. I really fail to understand why we can't dissect this bill and act on it in a way that really protects our children and promotes the finding of truth and justice. Thank you, Madam President.
Chair recognizes Senator Stewart, senator from King George.
Thank you, Madam President. Speaking to the motion.
The senator has the floor.
Madam President, I rise to oppose the motion as well. And I will tell you, as a Commonwealth's attorney many years ago, I had to try these cases. And they're difficult enough to try, but the reality of it is these children don't want to testify because they are afraid of being traumatized. They are scared of the individual that victimized them. And this gives us an opportunity to try to get the testimony from these children. The attorney, both attorneys are still in the room, but they don't have to look that perpetrator in the eye. I understand the gentleman from Eastern Fairfax is concerned about the standard on lines 29, and I tell you in about 15 seconds we can fix that, if that's what he's worried about. But this is an important bill to these children. These are children that are victims of sex crimes. And so I hope we won't send this back to committee.
Chair again recognizes Senator Boysko.
Thank you, Madam President. I would just like to remind the body that this was heard not only in our committee, but in the House, where there are very talented attorneys who clearly agreed with the premise of this bill. And I hope that we will reject this amendment and pass this very important bill.
Chair again recognizes Senator Normand.
Thank you, Madam President. Speaking to the bill.
The senator has the floor.
I apologize to the body because it is very obvious to me that the motion has created emotional trauma in this room, and I respect the passion, but the passion has nothing to do with this bill. It has nothing to do with this bill. I am not the least bit interested in statistics that are gotten from Googling or anything else. The real crux of this bill is a couple of things. First of all, the former Commonwealth attorney just shared with you about trying these cases. When this happens, even by closed circuit, the defense attorney is sitting right next, this close to the victim, and cross-examining them, and that is how it happens. And if you do not believe that that doesn't generate some trauma, it absolutely does. That is the process, and that process is not going to change. Every one of these disgusting cases that I've ever been involved in is they always bring in an expert witness to testify in his or her expert opinion as to whether or not that child, based upon their age, is going to be subject to some emotional trauma. There are a lot of individuals in this body that are infinitely more skilled attorneys than I would ever pray to be. But I can tell you, I have been involved in quite a few trials with adults where it is emotionally traumatizing to them, even in a civil case. The real issue with this matter is striking the word severe. That is the true issue with this bill. And that, in fact, what has happened is they are lowering the standard to just say emotional distress. There is hardly anyone that ever goes into a courtroom that is not subject to some emotional distress. What we are doing is we are eliminating the operative word and the predicate of the word severe. And that is what is going to be problematic with this. And so I accept the invitation that, hey, we can fix this on the floor. And I would respectfully, Madam President, move that the bill be passed by temporarily and bring me that amendment. And I will support it and I will advocate it. I got
sorry.
Without objection, House Bill 2129 goes by temporarily. Yes, that's it. House Bill 2129 goes by temporarily. Chair recognizes Senator Sasslaw, the senior senator from Fairfax County.
Madam President, I move that we waive the reading of the communications from the House of Delegates.
The question is, shall the reading of the communication be waived? Those in favor of waiving the reading of the communication from the House of Delegates will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 36, noes 4.
Ayes 36, noes 4. The reading of the communication from the House of Delegates is waived.
Page 7.
Announcing conferees to House bills. On page 7, House Bill 1524, the House has acceded to the request for a committee of conference. Conferees on the part of the Senate, as named by the chair of the Committee on Rules, Senator Locke, or Senators Deeds, Lucas, and McDougall. House Bill 1617, the House has acceded to the request for a committee of conference. Conferees on the part of the Senate, as named by Senator Eben, the chair of the Committee on General Laws and Technology, are Senators McPike, Locke, and Reeves. House Bill 1628, the House has acceded to the request for a committee of conference. Conferees on the part of the Senate, as named by the chair of the Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources, Senator Peterson, are Senators Favola, Hashmi, and Obenchain. House Bill 1840, the House has acceded to the request for a committee of conference. Conferees on the part of the Senate, as named by Senator Lucas, chair of the Committee on Education and Health, are Senators Lucas, Locke, and Cosgrove. House Bill 1841, the House has acceded to the request for a committee of conference. Conferees on the part of the Senate, as named by Senators Howell and Barker, chairs of the Committee on Finance and Appropriations, are Senators Barker, Normant, and Deeds. House Bill 1976, the House has acceded to the request for a committee of conference. Conferees on the part of the Senate, as named by Senators Edwards and Deeds, chairs of the Committee on the Judiciary, are Senators Deeds, McClellan, and Stewart. House Bill 2046, the House has acceded to the request for a committee of conference. Conferees on the part of the Senate, as named by Senator Eben, chair of the Committee on General Laws and Technology, are Senators Locke, McPike, and Pillion. House Bill 2169, the House has acceded to the request for a committee of conference. Conferees on the part of the Senate, as named by Senator Favola, the chair of the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services, are Senators Morrissey, Surville, and Reeves. House Bill 2208, the House has acceded to the request for a committee of conference. Conferees on the part of the Senate, as named by Senators Edwards and Deeds, chairs of the Committee on the Judiciary, are Senators Edwards, Surville, and McDougall. House Bill 2272, the House has acceded to the request for a committee of conference. Conferees on the part of the Senate, as named by Senator Lucas, chair of the Committee on Education and Health, are Senators Lucas, Locke, and Suderline. House Bill 2345, the House has acceded to the request for a committee of conference. Conferees on the part of the Senate, as named by Senator Lucas, Chair of the Committee on Education and Health are Senators Boysko, McPike, and Cosgrove. House Bill 2386. The House has acceded to the request for a committee of conference. Conferees on the part of the Senate, as named by Senator Saslaw, Chair of the Committee on Commerce and Labor, are Senators Saslaw, Lewis, and Vogel. House Bill 2398. The House has acceded to the request for a committee of conference. Conferees on the part of the Senate, as named by Senators Edwards and Deeds. Chairs of the Committee on the Judiciary are Senators Peterson, Surville, and Stanley. House Bill 2463. The House has acceded to the request for a committee of conference. Conferees on the part of the Senate, as named by Senator Saslaw, Chair of the Committee on Commerce and Labor, are Senators Saslaw, Surville, and Norman.
The Senate will be at ease for about 15 minutes while the clerk, compiles the necessary information.
Good evening, Madam President. Jason.
Senator Norman.
Madam President, I hope you're doing well.
Yes, sir, I've eaten. I'm fine.
Madam President, I respectfully withdraw my motion to re-refer the matter to the Courts Committee for purposes of allowing floor amendments to be addressed.
The question is, I guess, which is without objection. Without objection. Chair recognizes Senator Somerville, the senator from Eastern Fairfax County.
Thank you, Madam President. I move to waive reading of the floor amendment.
The question is, shall the Somerville reading of it, the reading of the Somerville floor amendment be waived? Those in favor of that motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The reading of the floor amendment is waived. Senator Somerville.
Thank you, Madam President. I move the floor amendment and speak to that motion.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, what this amendment basically does is gets rid of all the changes in paragraph 3 of this bill, or lines 29 through 33, and it reinserts what's existing law. And I wasn't here in 1991 or 2 or whenever when the statute got adopted, but I would note that the language in the existing code is 100% consistent with the United States Supreme Court case of Maryland v. Craig. And I'll just read you the operative paragraph where, in that case, the court said, the Maryland Court of Appeals accordingly concluded that as a prerequisite to the use of the statutory procedure, the Confrontation Clause requires the trial court to make a specific finding. The testimony by the child in the courtroom in the presence of the defendant would result in the child suffering severe emotional distress, such that the child could not reasonably communicate. Then they wrote, this conclusion is consistent with our holding today. The U.S. Supreme Court said, this language is consistent with the U.S. Supreme Court's understanding of the Sixth Amendment Confrontation Clause. And, Madam President, I also know there's another amendment out there. I pulled down again, I mentioned earlier, but I pulled down a memo from I think it's the National Conference of Prosecutors or something like that. But it's a law update as of August of 2012, and it has 35 different states. I would just note that the moderate standard is in use in 1 state. That's it. And the severe standard is consistent with the Constitution. I think that's the standard we need to stick with until we have real time to actually look into, have discussion, debate, dialogue, input about what we're doing in this area of the law. And I would hope we could adopt this floor amendment.
Chair recognizes Senator Boysko, the senator from Northwestern Fairfax.
Thank you, Madam President. Speaking to the amendment.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I urge the body to vote no on this amendment. Doing so would not make any change except for the age of the child. I've spoken with the patron of the bill who said that the age is not her issue. She wants to see us open up a slight bit, and I have an amendment that will address that. Again, I will remind the body that there is a state that has used the language that we are proposing. There has been zero pushback in that state, and it is in their code right now. And sometimes we have laws that are antiquated, or when we learn more, we do better and we change laws. We just a few minutes ago voted for a bill that a lot of people know is possibly unconstitutional, but it will make an effort to protect children from extreme sexual content. I ask you to vote no on this amendment.
Chair recognizes Senator McPike, the senator from Prince William.
Madam President, I hate to delay the discussion of the floor amendment, but just looking at the bill, lines 32 and 33 are existing law, and so I want to make sure that the patron of the amendment is correct in his explaining and perhaps go at ease for a correction.
Chair recognizes Senator Normand, the senator from James City County.
Thank you, Madam President. I would defer to Senator Serville for a Scribner's error.
Senator Serville.
Speaking to the amendment.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. The senator from Prince William County is absolutely correct that there was an error. It needs to be striking lines through line 31 and not through line 33. And the clerk advises we need to do a second amendment for that. So in light of that, I'll withdraw my floor amendment so the clerk staff can circulate a revised one with the correct line numbers on it.
Without objection, the senator's floor amendment is withdrawn. Senator Normand.
Madam President, addressing, I guess, what would now be the amendment that was offered by Senator Boysko.
It's not yet before us, sir. I'd need to ask her to waive the reading.
Madam President, I waive the reading.
The question is, shall the Boysko floor amendment, the reading of it, be waived? Those in favor of that motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The reading of the floor amendment is waived. Senator Boysko.
Thank you, Madam President. With this amendment, it basically puts us back in the posture of the original bill as introduced in the House. It would remove the word de minimis and would state again the court's finding by preponderance of evidence based upon the expert testimony that the child will suffer moderate emotional trauma, and it strikes the remainder of the de minimis line. I again reiterate the motion. So there are two amendments. One puts moderate in, and that is the first amendment. And the second strikes that is more than de minimis. And I would move that we vote on them together.
Chair recognizes Senator Normand.
Madam President, speaking to the motion.
The senator has the floor.
I will try to be as delicate and judicious as possible. This is an unworkable standard. It is an unworkable standard, and I don't want to hear that one state in the United States is doing it. This is an amendment that is driven by emotion and not by facts and not from a business perspective. And I think that the amendment that will be offered once the Scribner's error on the appropriate lines that were offered under Senator Servile's bill is a good compromise. It doesn't change the age. It has put in a substantial likelihood situation, and when you contrast the two, a moderate standard is an invitation for a judicial disaster.
Chair recognizes again Senator Boysko.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, speaking to the amendment.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you. I happen to live in the most populated county in the entire Commonwealth of Virginia. And this was crafted with the Commonwealth attorney there because the standard as is in the law now is so high that nobody is qualifying for it. Yet we know that we have children who are being abused and trying to take action to hold their perpetrators accountable, yet deserve the dignity and the protection from adults in the room to allow them to testify remotely. They will still have an attorney on both sides asking them questions. This gives the judge more flexibility. This is not a mandate. This gives the judge more flexibility, and they deserve that.
The question is, shall the Boy Scout amendments be agreed to? Those in favor of that motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The chair is uncertain. This will be a recorded vote. Those in favor of the Boy Scout amendments will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 10, noes 29.
Ayes 10, noes 29. The Boy Scout amendment fails. Senator Sorovell.
Thank you, Madam President. I ask the bill go by temporarily so that we can get the next floor amendment distributed.
Without objection, House Bill 2129 goes by temporarily.
On page 25 of the calendar, Senate Bill 820, the House has insisted on its substitute and requested a committee of conference.
Chair recognizes Senator Favola, the senator from Arlington.
Thank you, Madam President. I ask that the Senate accede to the request for a committee of conference.
The question is, shall the Senate accede to the request for a committee on conference on the bill? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, no 0.
Ayes 39, no 0. The Senate accedes.
Conferees on the part of the Senate, as named by Senator Favola, Chair of the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services, are Senators Favola, Locke, and Pillion. Senate Bill 1043, the House has insisted on its amendments and requested a committee of conference.
Chair recognizes Senator McPike.
Thank you, Madam President. Move that we accede to the request for a committee of conference.
The question is, shall the Senate accede and request a committee of conference? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, no 0.
Ayes 39, no 0. The Senate accedes.
Conferees on the part of the Senate, as named by Senator Lucas, the Chair of the Committee on Education and Health, are Senators McPike, Locke, and Pillion. Senate Bill 1166. The House has insisted on its substitute and requested a committee of conference.
Chair recognizes Senator Sorovell.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that we accede to the House request for a committee of conference.
The question is, shall the Senate accede to the request for a committee of conference on the bill? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, no 0.
Ayes 39, no 0. The Senate accedes.
Conferees on the part of the Senate, as named by Senator Saslaw, Chair of the Committee on Commerce and Labor, are Senators Saslaw, Spruill, and Normand. Senate Bill 1217, the House has insisted on its substitute and requested a committee of conference.
Chair recognizes Senator Mason, the senator from Williamsburg.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I move that we accede to the House's request for a committee of conference.
The question is, shall the Senate accede to the request for a committee of conference on the bill? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, no 0.
Ayes 39, no 0. The Senate accedes.
Conferees on the part of the Senate, as named by Senator Saslaw, Chair of the Committee on Commerce and Labor, are Senators Mason, Lucas, and Newman. Senate Bill 1482, the House has insisted on its amendment and requests a committee of conference.
Chair recognizes again Senator Sorovell.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that we accede to the House request for a committee conference.
The question is, shall the Senate accede to the request for a committee of conference on the bill? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, no 0.
Ayes 39, no 0. The Senate accedes.
Conferees on the part of the Senate as named by Senator Saslaw, Chair of the Committee on Commerce and Labor, are Senators Saslaw, Surville, and Normand.
Yeah, probably needs to be done.
We have a set of replacement conferees on House Bill 2345 as named by Senator Lucas, Chair of the Committee on Education and Health. House Bill 2345, Senators Boysko, McPike, and Donovan.
The Senate will temporarily be at recess.
As named by Senator Saslaw, Chair of the Committee on Commerce and Labor, Senators Surville, Spruill, and Normand. Senate Bill 1166. On page 27, House Bill 2129, we have floor amendment number 2 from Senator Surville.
Chair recognizes Senator Sorovell.
Thank you, Madam President. I move the waive reading of the floor amendment.
The question is, shall the reading of the floor amendment be waived? Number 2. Those in favor of that motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The reading of the floor amendment is waived. Senator Sorovell.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd move the floor amendment. Speaking to the motion.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Ladies and gentlemen, Senate, this floor amendment does, as I previously explained, and strikes the correct lines in the bill and not the 2 extra lines the senator from Prince William caught. And I would hope we could adopt the amendment.
The question is, shall the floor amendment be agreed to? Those in favor of that motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The floor amendment is agreed to. Senator Normand.
Thank you, Madam President. Having technical difficulties over here, I would now move
passage.
I would move that the bill pass.
Would the senator like to speak to the bill, or?
Not exactly, Madam. Madam President, having relied upon the previous explanations and dialogue that has taken place, I think everyone is familiar with what the bill does, and I would respectfully ask that it pass.
The question is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of passage will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, no 0.
Ayes 39, no 0. The bill passes. Chair recognizes the senior senator from Fairfax County, Senator Saslaw.
Madam President, I move we waive the reading of the communications from the House of Delegates.
The question is, shall the reading of the communication from the House be waived? Those in favor of waiving the reading of the communication from the House of Delegates will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 36, noes 3.
Ayes 36, noes 3. The reading of the communication from the House of Delegates is waived. We will be at ease while the Senate clerks process this latest communication. Madam Clerk.
Supplemental calendar number 2, unfinished business House Bill 1757. The House has rejected the Senate amendment.
Chair recognizes Senator Deeds, the senator from Charlottesville.
Madam President, I request that we.
The senator will suspend. I cannot hear you, sir.
I move that we insist on our amendment and request a committee of conference. This bill is identical to Senate Bill 845 that we sent to conference about an hour or so ago.
The question is, shall the Senate insist on its amendment and request a committee of conference on the bill? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 38, no 0.
Ayes 38, no 0. The Senate insists on its request.
And we are awaiting House action on the remaining bill.
They're on the beginning on the front page. The House is acceded, and we have just to name it.
We have conferees to name. On the blue supplemental calendar, House Bill 1770. On page 1. Conferees on the part of the Senate, as named by the Chair of Commerce and Labor, Senator Saslaw, or Senators Saslaw, Spruill, and Norman. On page 1, House Bill 2302, conferees on the part of the Senate, is named by the Chair of Transportation, Senator Marsden, or Senators Newman, McPike, and Saraville. Page 2, House Bill 2330, conferees on the part of the Senate, is named by the co-chairs of Judiciary, Senators Edward and Deeds, or Senators Saraville, Morrissey, and Stanley. Page 2, House Bill 2333, conferees on the part of the Senate, is named by the Chair of Commerce and Labor, Senator Saslaw, of Senators Saraville, Mason, and Newman. Page 3, House Bill 2348, conferees on the part of the Senate, is named by the Chair of Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources, Senator Peterson, or Senators Boysko, McClellan, and Stanley. Turning to page 12 of the blue supplemental calendar. House Bill 845, Senate Bill 845 has passed the House with, the House has assisted on its amendments and requested committee of conference.
Chair recognizes Senator Saraville, the senator from Eastern Fairfax County.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that we accede to the House request for a committee of conference.
The question is, shall the Senate accede to the request for a committee of conference on the bill? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 38, no 0.
Ayes 38, no 0. The Senate accedes.
Conferees on the part of the Senate is named by the co-chairs of Judiciary, Senators Edwards and Deeds, Senators Peterson, Deeds, and Obenshain. On page 15, Senate Bill 1233.
Chair recognizes Senator Reeves.
No, I'm sorry. I was at the wrong place. Senate Bill 1184. The House insisted and requested a committee of conference.
Chair recognizes again Senator Reeves.
Thank you, Madam President. I would now move that we accede to a conference committee.
The question is, shall the Senate accede to the Committee of Conference on the bill? Those in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 38, no 0.
Ayes 38, no 0. The Senate accedes to the request for a Committee of Conference on the bill.
Conferees on the part of the Senate is named by the co-chairs of Judiciary, Senators Edwards and Deeds, Senators Reeves, Deeds, and Surville. Senate Bill 1233. The House has insisted on its amendments and requested a Committee of Conference.
Chair recognizes Senator Obenshain, the senator from Rockingham.
Madam President, I move that we accede to the House request for a committee conference.
The question is, shall the Senate accede to the request for a Committee of Conference on the bill? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 37, no 0.
Ayes 37, no 0. The Senate accedes to the request for a Committee of Conference.
Conference on the part of the Senate is named by the Chair of Rehabilitation and Social Services, Senator Favola, Senators Obenshain, Spruill, and Boyce-Coe. Page 16, Senate Bill 1245. The House insists on its amendments and requests a Committee of Conference.
Chair again recognizes Senator Obenshain.
Madam President, I move that we accede to the House request for a committee conference.
The question is, shall the Senate accede to a Committee of Conference on the bill? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 37, no 0.
Ayes 37, no 0. The Senate accedes.
Conferees on the part of the Senate is named by the Chair of Rehabilitation and Social Services, Senator Favola, or Senators Obenshain, Morrissey, and Boyce-Coe. On page 18, Senate Bill 1361. The House insists on its amendments, its substitute, and request a Committee of Conference.
Chair recognizes Senator Morrissey. Senator Surville.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that we accede to the House's request for a committee conference.
The question is, shall the Senate accede to the request for the Committee of Conference on the bill? Those in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 38, no 0.
Ayes 38, no 0. The Senate accedes to the request.
Conferees on the part of the Senate is named by the Chair of Rules Committee, Senator Locke, or Senators Morrissey, Favola, and Norman.
We have House Communication. House Communication. Senator Sasslaw.
Madam Clerk, I think we were left out.
I think we were too.
Senator Sasslaw.
I move that we waive the reading of the communications from the House, Madam President.
The question is, shall the reading of the communications from the House be waived? Those in favor of waiving the reading of the communication from the House of Delegates will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 33, noes 5.
Ayes 33, noes 5. The reading of the communication from the House of Delegates is waived.
And now you can come tell the story.
Returning to the yellow, to the back page, page 2 of the yellow calendar.
Page 2 of the yellow supplemental calendar. House Bill 2129.
House rejected.
The House has rejected. The Senate substitute with amendments.
Chair recognizes Senator Normand.
Please.
Madam President, I move that we insist on our amendments and request a committee of conference.
The question is, shall the Senate insist on its amendment and request a committee of conference on the bill? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 37, no 0.
Ayes 37, no 0. The Senate insists.
Conferees on the part of the Senate on House Bill 1757. It's on page 1 of your yellow calendar. Conferees named by the co-chairs of Judiciary, Senators Edwards and Deeds, are Senators Peterson, Deeds, and Obenshain. Page 2 of the yellow calendar, conferees on the part of the Senate on House Bill 2129 is named by the co-chairs of Judiciary, Senator Edwards and Deeds, are Senators Serville, Morrissey, and Norman.
Senator Saslaw. Chair recognizes the senator. Any other business?
Madam President, I would inquire, is that complete all of the calendars?
Yes, sir.
Is there any more food left?
Sure.
Chair recognizes Senator Rouse, the junior senator from Virginia Beach.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise for a point of personal privilege.
The senator has the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, I know it's been a long day, so I'll try to be brief in what I want to address to you all tonight. As Black History Month comes to a close, I just want to take this point to remind us of how important it is to tell our history. 8 U.S. presidents were born here in Virginia. And I wonder, some of you probably can name them all. George Washington, Jefferson, Madison, Monroe, Harrison, Tyler, Taylor, and Wilson. These men's names and their legacies will be known throughout time, throughout our state and our nation, for the legacies have given us our current disposition. When we begin to examine and study history, for the lessons that we ought to have learned as to not repeat the mistakes, I shudder at the notion that parts of our powerful history, specifically the contributions of African Americans in the Commonwealth. Madam President, the pursuit of happiness is embedded in the Declaration of Independence and reinforced in the United States Constitution. Each of us have endured our own pursuit to happiness. And for African Americans, that pursuit often lacked liberty. The same liberty that Patrick Henry shouted in St. John's Church here in Richmond in 1775 at the Second Virginia Convention. Give me liberty or give me death. Madam President, we Virginians share a powerful history that must be told in its totality in order to produce the next great leaders of tomorrow. I would argue that no farmer would cut off the vine or stem before his fruits or produce becomes ripe. Our Virginia history is like the root that absorbed the nutrients from the stories of bravery, sacrifices, pain, triumphs, hate, racism, bias, setbacks, disappointments, persistence, love, humility, communication, and courage. You see, these stories are our history. They will help develop a generation that will protect the inalienable rights that give strength to all who pursue that happiness, the life, and liberty. We must not be afraid of our past, for God did not give us a spirit of fear, but of power and love and self-control. You see, we are Virginians, and as Virginians, we share a powerful history that is filled with beautiful truths and harsh facts. But we must not let the byproducts of fear, like guilt, shame, or deceit, cloud the pathway to a brighter future. Madam President, if I could bring your attention to a story really quick, and it's the story of Joseph, the son of Jacob, whose brothers sold him into slavery in Egypt. You see, Joseph was imprisoned in Egypt, and because he was the only one that could interpret the Pharaoh's dream, the Pharaoh made him second in charge of all of Egypt. A great famine would come, and Joseph's brothers, who sold him into slavery, came asking for help. They did not recognize Joseph as his brother, but in time, he revealed it to them. And then they were fearful. They spoke among themselves, asking, "What if Joseph holds a grudge against us for all the wrongs we did against him?" And Joseph replied to his brothers, "Do not be afraid. Am I in the place of God?" Then he reassured them and spoke kindly to them. Madam President, I ask, who amongst us can stand in the place of God? We are Virginians, and we do share a powerful history. 1619, the first enslaved African Americans arrived on these shores, the home of Sally Hemings, Henrietta Lacks, Booker T. Washington, and more. In the year 2000, a black woman was elected mayor of Hampton, becoming the first African American woman to do so. She sits among us, Senator Lott. In 2019, the first black woman was elected president pro tem of the Virginia Senate. She sits among us, Senator Lucas. In 2020, the first black woman was elected to lieutenant governor of Virginia. You sit among us, Madam President Winsome Sears. And recently, the first black woman was elected to represent Virginia in the United States Congress, representing the 4th Congressional District, Senator Jennifer McClellan. You see, these women are trailblazers, live and well. They play a significant role in the Commonwealth, and their legacies will provide waypoints for future trailblazers. You see, they are Virginia. They are black Americans. They are black history makers. And I'm bewildered and perplexed to think that one day their legacy will be overlooked and their accomplishments stricken from the history books. Madam President, the contributions of African Americans, especially the black women I mentioned today, provided the nutrients and opportunities for someone like me that grew up fatherless and poor to be amongst you today in the oldest Senate in our nation. Oh, Virginians, my Senate colleagues, we have a powerful history that is bold and fearless, and we must not shy away from it. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank the senator. Chair recognizes Senator Bell, the senator from Loudoun.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise for a point of personal privilege.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Tonight I share sad news that I'm sure many of you have already heard, that our colleague down the hall, Delegate Mike Mullen, and his wife Rebecca, unfortunately lost their son Peter yesterday. In 2019, when my son passed away during the session, Mike stood up on the floor and gave a very eloquent speech honoring him. It touched all of our hearts in my family, and it brought us comfort. I'm not going to try to do that right now. But what I'm going to tell you is the prayers and the support I received from people all over the Capitol, from both sides of the aisle, from every person on staff, helped me get through it. I know the pain this family's going through right now. It's terrible. So I'm going to ask all of you to please send them love and please lift them up in your prayers tonight. Thank you, Madam President.
We thank the senator. Senator Normand, the senator from James City County.
Thank you, Madam President. A brief point of personal privilege.
The senator has the floor.
Madam President, following up on the comments of the senator from Loudoun, I appreciate very much the remarks that he's made, and even though Delegate Mullins and I are of different political parties, he is a very close friend. He resides in the neighborhood where I live in James City County. Yesterday, when I saw the news article come across that he was not seeking re-election, and it's not because he isn't dedicated to this legislative process, that he's had a number of changes in his life. And so I walked down, left the session, walked down to the end of the hall, asked him to come out, and gave him a hug and thanked him for his service and his brotherhood. And even though we have different perspectives in the House and in the Senate, we have different political alignments, different philosophies, we really all are members of a sisterhood and a brotherhood of the legislative process. And the note that I had written that I was going to hand it to the President Pro Tem is that when we adjourn tonight, that we do so in the condolences and prayers for Delegate Mike Mullins and his family, which are going through extremely difficult times. So I respectfully ask that when we do adjourn today, that we do with those remarks.
Without objection. Is there any other business to come before the Senate? Hearing none, the clerk will report any announcements on the desk.
Tomorrow, Friday, February 25th, the Democratic caucus will meet 1/2 hour before session in Senate Room 1 in the Capitol. The Republican caucus will meet 1/2 hour before session in Senate Room 2 in the Capitol. Tomorrow is page, mock session, and graduation. The mock session will start at 10 a.m. here in the Senate chamber. We welcome all members who want to try to be a page. We have already signed Senator Rouse to the Lieutenant Governor. She had to have her personal page. And at 11:30 a.m., we will have the page graduation. Session will convene at 11:30, and then we'll go into the graduation immediately.
Chair now calls on Senator Lucas, the senator from Portsmouth.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I move that the Senate do now adjourn until 11:30 a.m. on tomorrow, and in so doing, that we offer our condolences and prayers for Delegate Mike Mullin and his family.
adjourn until 11:30 a.m. with condolences and prayers for Delegate Mike Mullen and his family. All those in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. The Senate stands adjourned until 11:30 a.m. tomorrow.